welcome back to EDH Deck Building. I am your host, Demo, and what commander cards for you are not casual? This is actually a video I made a long time ago in the very beginnings of my channel because I thought it was a discussion that needed to be had, and I saw a lot of people talking about this stuff in the comments of my videos in the beginning, and I thought I would revisit it. It is an important discussion to have, I think. I will just point out that I will not be taking any sides here. I'm not saying any of these cards are necessarily casual or not. I'm just bringing them up purely for the discussion purposes. A lot of people don't realize that, hey, a card that I'm using a lot, maybe some other people might not think it's so casual, especially for newer players, all right? A lot of newer players out there might put some cards in their deck that they think are really good and probably are really good, and they don't realize that they might end up playing against some person that isn't going to like them having that card in their deck in a casual commander game, right? We all know what I'm talking about here. I'm sure we've all experienced it. My own personal experience with this, and what first brought it to my attention, I was playing my Tana and Tymna deck way back when I first started playing Commander. I've brought this story up a couple of times on this channel before. It was a very high-powered deck. You know, I would say it definitely was still casual, but a very high-powered one. I talked about this in my 5 decks I never lost with video because this was one of the decks that I never lost with. But more importantly, it was the deck that really made me realize that there is a delicate balance between what is casual and what is not. And the interaction I specifically had with that deck was I had an opponent who cast Decree of Annihilation, or I guess they cycled Decree of Annihilation, destroyed all the lands, and I'm sitting there going, are you serious, guy? Casual commander, you're blowing up all the lands? What's going on with that? And his response was, what are you talking about, man? You're playing dual lands. So we're talking about the OG dual lands from Alpha and Beta. Of course, they are really expensive. I don't know if they're necessarily powerful, but this individual thought that playing dual lands in a casual commander deck was not okay. I didn't even know that was a thing, right? So that was the first time it was brought to my attention, and I've brought it up on this channel a few times, and every single time I do so, I have people in the comments telling me that they don't think dual lands are very casual, and other people telling me that of course they're casual. It's bananas to think otherwise, but that's why I like making videos like this, and I encourage people to read the comments in this video to see the differing opinions that people have on what is actually casual in Commander. As I brought up in the original video, for me, cards that people tend to think are not very casual are cards that fall into 2 criteria. One, of course, they're really powerful cards, but also they're really expensive. Those 2 things working together tend to drive the ire up of other players when you have those cards in a commander game. And I like to give the example of Sol Ring and Mana Crypt, right? Sol Ring is a card that almost everyone would not have an issue with in a casual commander game. I don't play it myself, but I certainly do not have an issue if my opponents do. Mana Crypt, however, is one that a lot of people don't love to see in a casual commander game. And again, as I stated many times on my channel, I actually think Sol Ring is a better card in a casual commander game. In a casual commander game, you're going long, you're probably doing 8-10 turns. There's 0 downside to a Sol Ring. It costs 1 mana. Oh well. Sure, Mana Crypt is free, but it's going to be doing you quite a bit of damage over the course of the game. I would much rather have a Sol Ring in a casual commander game over a Mana Crypt. The only issue that I see is that Mana Crypt costs a lot more. The only reason why people are okay with Sol Ring in a casual commander game and not so much with Mana Crypt is because Sol Ring is cheap and everybody's got one. I think if Mana Crypt was a $2 card and everybody had it in all their commander decks, I don't think there would be nearly as many people that would have issue with it. If you look at a couple of cards that I've brought up on my channel a few times, Force Field and Guardian Beast, those are 2 cards that if you've never seen them before, you're like, hey, those are pretty neat cards, I guess. They're not too powerful. If I played either of those cards in a casual commander game, I don't think anybody would care. Like, who would complain about me playing one of these cards in a casual commander game? Nobody would. But they are really expensive. Both of them are incredibly expensive cards, but my opponents aren't going to care if I play them, I guarantee it. So I really think a lot of times it is the combination of a card that has a powerful effect, but also is expensive, so it's not as accessible, and not everyone has one, right? Let's look at some more of the mana positive mana rocks that get a lot of complaints usually, right? Grim Monolith, Mana Vault, those are ones that people don't love seeing in a casual game. Again, kind of expensive. also obviously really powerful. Do you have an issue with these, right? Again, this is a discussion. Let me know in the comments below. Are these casual cards? If your opponent plays Sol Ring Grim Monolith on turn 1 in a casual commander game, are you going to be raising an eyebrow, or are you going to be totally okay with it? For me, I've played with a lot of people all over the world online, and I've had lots of different interactions. There is tons and tons of people out there that are really going to be unhappy if they see a Mana Vault on turn 1. Again, even though it is not that much of a difference between that and a Sol Ring. I mean, if you compare these two cards, really, again, I think Sol Ring is better. Both of them cost 1 mana. Mana Vault is adding only 1 more mana than does a Sol Ring and has a really bad downside. I've seen a lot of people play a turn 1 Mana Vault and not untap it for the rest of the game, and it just sits there tapped. It's essentially a really bad colorless ritual effect, which is not that good at all, I don't think. Sol Ring is just going to sit there untapping every turn. You get to use it for the whole game. So I'm looking at these two cards and I'm thinking I would much rather have a Sol Ring in my deck than a Mana Vault. But again, Mana Vault is a lot more expensive, so that I think is the reason why more people have an issue with it in a casual commander game. Let's look at some more lands. Again, I already talked about dual lands. How about fetch lands or shock lands? Again, just anecdotal evidence here, but I did play a casual commander game where I cracked a fetch land to go get a shock land, and I had an opponent that didn't feel like that was a very casual commander play. I mean, everyone has their opinion. I think that's a bit much. The people that have issues with dual lands, I kind of get that. Fetch lands, okay, now you're sort of pushing it. Shock lands, definitely, I don't think there's any issue there. In fact, for the most part, they're necessary if you're going to be playing any deck that is more than 2 colors. I mean, I don't really play decks that are more than 2 colors, so I don't really play fetch lands and shock lands that much, but I think it is absolutely necessary in order to enable people to do so, right? Once you get up to 4 and 5 colors, trying to do that without any fetch lands or shock lands is really tough. Some more obvious choices here, though, for lands that people might not think are casual. Gaia's Cradle is obviously the one that gets brought up time and time again. I've heard people call for this card to get banned on many occasions. Obviously, it's incredibly powerful, and it is also really, really expensive, right? It hits those 2 criteria, hits them really well, in fact, because it's a very expensive card and a very powerful one. How many people think this card is casual? Is Gaia's Cradle a casual commander card? Are you going to be okay with seeing it in a casual commander game? Do you want it actually banned? As I've said many times in the past, again, I'm okay with it depending on what my opponent is doing. If my opponent's playing an Elf Ball deck and they play their Gaia's Cradle and they go off and they sort of just have a 20-minute long turn and end up winning the game, I'm a little not okay with that, especially if it's only like turn 3 or 4. I probably would be very much not okay with it. But if my opponent is playing Unicorn Tribal and they just have a powerful card in their deck that is enabling them to make a really underwhelming tribe a little bit better, that I'm more okay with. I would be totally okay with someone doing that. So for me, it's more about the circumstances of how you're using that card than the actual card. Again, though, bring an awareness to this, right? There's a lot of people that might have a Gaia's Cradle, throw it in their casual elf deck, and when your opponent sees it, they might not be very happy to do so. And if you end up winning, they'll probably call you out the fact that the only reason you won is because you had a Gaia's Cradle. I know we've all experienced that sort of situation before. I mean, we could go even deeper into this. Tabernacle at Pendrell Vale and Mishra's Workshop. Those are 2 cards that I think are absurdly powerful, even better than Gaia's Cradle, in my opinion. I mean, Mishra's Workshop is a land that gives you 3 mana on turn 1 if you're using it for artifacts. Tabernacle at Pendrell Vale is a card that is maybe the best creature hate card ever. I don't know. I mean, it's one of the best stacks cards ever printed. They're both absurdly expensive, really, really expensive cards. These are both legal in the format. You know, I know you guys probably don't see these much in a casual commander game. I've seen them a couple times. I wasn't happy to do so, right? Especially the Tabernacle. It makes any deck that is even remotely creature heavy very unfun to play. Are these casual cards? I'm actually kind of shocked that these cards aren't banned in the format. A lot of people call for Gaia's Cradle to get banned, and I don't hear a lot of people talking about these cards getting banned, I guess because you just don't see them much because they're incredibly expensive and rare, but you can, right? It is a possibility that in a casual commander game, your opponent's going to play a turn 1 Mishra's Workshop or a turn 1 Tabernacle, and that can very much change the outset of the game. Let's talk about a couple of cards that are a little less extreme in this situation. How about Necropotence? I've actually heard people call for it to get banned. I think it probably is one of the best card draw cards ever printed in the game of Magic, period. It is incredibly powerful, no doubt. Also expensive, so it's fitting those 2 categories. Are you okay with Necropotence being played in a casual casual Commander game. I'm really on the fence about this. You know, this is one of those cards where if they banned it, I would be totally okay with it. I mean, obviously I don't play it. It certainly is teetering on the edge. It's incredibly powerful. If you've ever made a Zur the Enchanter deck, every single time you get your commander out, people assume you're going to get Necropotence, so they kill your commander right away. It really sucks. I don't know if this card should be banned, but I definitely think we're on the edge here as far as, is it a casual commander card? I don't think I would love it if my opponent played this in a casual commander game. Here's a really controversial one, I think. Force of Will, right? Generally considered to be the best counterspell in the entire game. And again, we can get into the other free counterspells as well. There's lots of them. Fierce Guardianship, Pact of Negation, all those kinds of cards. Essentially the whole gamut of free counterspells. A lot of people don't consider them to be casual, right? If your opponent casts a Force of Will in a casual commander game, how much are you gonna love that? Me personally, I would be okay with it. I think this is a casual commander card. The thing about this is, and it's sort of the same with Necropotence and Gaia's Cradle and a lot of these cards, when my opponent is playing cards like this, if I see my opponent cast a Force of Will in a casual commander game, what that tells me, that sort of sets off my radar that my opponent is playing a very high-powered version of a casual commander deck, right? Even if their deck is actually a casual commander deck, even if they're playing a very casual commander, the fact that they have cards like Force of Will alerts me to the fact that they have ramped up the power level of that casual commander to about as high as it can go, right? So it's probably like a power level 8 or something. I mean, for me, the cards that I don't want to see in a casual commander game are not so much necessarily the really powerful ones as the ones that have a powerful effect on the game. So for example, Vorinclex or Expropriate, those are two cards that I don't love seeing in a commander game. I would much rather see a Gaia's Cradle and a Force of Will than these two cards. They annoy the heck out of me. They have an incredibly powerful outcome on the whole game, right? A Force of Will for me, yes, it's a powerful card. It is a counter spell, but it's only going to affect one person. It's only going to affect one spell, in fact, whereas a card like Vorinclex or Expropriate can just end up turning the whole entire game around. So those are the cards that for me, I'm just like, I really cringe when I see them in a casual game. Certainly they are casual though. I can't say that they are not. There's always going to be cards that you don't want to see in a casual commander game, no doubt, especially when your opponents are playing them. So this isn't just about the things you like or don't like. It's about, are there cards that are actually not casual? Do you think there are cards out there that just should not be seen in a casual commander game, right? Thassa's Oracle is another one. I'm actually surprised a lot of people play this in casual games from what I've heard in my comments section. That's one for me that I'm like, I definitely wouldn't think that that was a casual commander card. I mean, we're talking about the #1 win con in CEDH. How are you playing the #1 win con in CEDH in a casual commander game? So for me, if I was to take a heavy stance on something, this would be it. Thassa's Oracle probably should never be played in a casual commander game. I just thought that was pretty obvious, but maybe people disagree with that. Again, I suppose it depends on what you're doing with it, right? I've called for Gifts Ungiven to be unbanned. A lot of people lose their minds when I say that because they're like, oh, someone can just tutor for their combo pieces and win. And I'm like, okay, but are we playing casual commander now? So for me, it's all about what are you doing with the card? Gifts Ungiven is a really fun, interesting card in a Magic game. If you're just going to tutor for your combo pieces and win, now you're playing CEDH, right? So that's not casual commander anyway. If I'm using my Thassa's Oracle in a casual commander deck to just maybe blink it over and over so I can look at the top few cards of my library and that's it, okay, no problem with that, right? But if I'm using my Thassa's Oracle to just straight up win the game on like turn 4, now you're not really playing casual commander at all, right? So I guess at the end of the day, for me, rather than specifically whether or not certain cards should be played in a casual commander game or not, it's more about what are you actually doing in the game. But again, this video is purely for discussion purposes, so let me know in the comments below what you think. Are there cards that should not be played in a casual commander game, or cards that should just straight up be banned in commander that aren't? Or are you just okay with everything as long as people are actually playing a casual commander game? Let me know your thoughts below, but that is it for today, and thanks for tuning in.